Well, to speak more on this, let's now welcome Professor Jacob Mofokeng, a crime and violence expert at Tshwane University of Technology. Prof, very good afternoon to you, and thank you so much for your time. I want to start then on those very last words of Professor Gopal, suggesting, in fact, that criminals are literally getting away with murder. I mean, what will it then take for police to regain their footing and curb these mass shootings that are becoming more and more prevalent?
Well, good afternoon, Onachi, as well as SABC News viewers. Well, indeed, I share the sentiments of Professor Gopal. Firstly, we need to be able to make priorities in terms of empowering the Hawks, the Directorate for Priority Crime Investigation, DPCI. 2017, they made submissions to Portfolio Parliamentary Committee in terms of highlighting the need for a specialized unit to be established based on the State of the Nation address by the President in 2016. However, they did not really make progress in terms of realization of that particular unit. Then we saw that then in 2018, there was ruling by the Constitutional Court indicating that gun owners are not complying, in terms of issuing of license, for those that are applying. There was no proper screening, for the applicants. And then we also observed that there is a poor management and fraud and corruption by the police. Problems in the police service allowed guns in police custody to be stolen and sold. We remember that case of Colonel Prinsloo, where around 2,400 guns, that were in the custody of the police registry. Then they end up, in the hands of gangsters. We also saw some of, gun owners, from Devon who was caught, in transit to Cape Town to be able to hand over certain illegal firearms. So these kinds of challenges then.
Yeah, Prof, I mean, you mentioned
in an awkward situation. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned something that I also wanted to touch on, and that, of course, is just that concern over whether government and in so saying the police is effectively combating illegal firearms in the country. I mean, you're talking about how these illegal weapons are circulating, in the streets and ending up in the hands of criminals. We've also heard, like you are rightfully saying, how some weapons that were owned by police officers also, ending up in the hands of criminals. I want to touch on what you think is behind these crimes, these criminals being emboldened when they commit these crimes. I mean, they are so brazen in the way in which they commit some of these crimes. Just this case in Lusikisiki, where they've essentially mowed down 18 people, family members in one home. We saw how they, executed their attacks by just breaking into these homes as we start to piece the investigation around what happened there. But just what is behind the psyche of the violence that we are seeing with these criminals?
Well, it's a fact that, South Africa inherited a violent, country in terms of how then the previous regime, introduced and entrenched violence in South Africa. So eventually then we then introduced to 2001, firearm control, where, we were looking forward to check if indeed there will be a reduction of, illegal firearms doing circulations in South Africa. And then the issues of crime intelligence, as well as the lack of resources within, a capable law enforcement agencies. We are aware that those that are trained as, experienced and seasoned, crime investigators, they normally don't stay within the South African Police Service. So criminals are aware of this, challenges that are confronting. We are aware of the instability, in the era of General Kele, as well as, when he became the minister, of how, instability the police leadership was. Then now the new minister, he came with a promise that he will work with other stakeholders, because he realized that sometimes the police resources are pulled in areas where actually it's not the core mandate of the South African Police Service to deal with certain cases. Now, criminals are aware that, police is stretched, and criminal intelligence is not really doing what it's supposed to be doing. Hence, other commentators then will argue that they are aware that whatever they do, they will even get away with, whatever crime. So crime prevention strategy is calling for, all stakeholders to be able to be hands-on, as well as to provide necessary, added hands to be able to work with the law enforcement agencies.
All right, Prof, let's leave it there for now. Of course, there's also that question, of course, about just the lack of trust between community members as the police as well, that we are also seeing with this latest crime in particular. Professor Jacob Mofokeng, but thank you so much for your time. And of course, the professor is a crime and violence expert at the Tshwane University of Technology.